Some walk by night, some fly by day. We're talking moonlighting. Hit it. It was 1985. The first group of Japanese astronauts were selected. The first mobile phone call was made in the UK. Michael Jackson bought every Beatles song for $47 million. And Cybill Shepherd and Bruce Willis starred as a pair of bickering private detectives. I'm your host, Jerry D, with another episode of Totally Rad Christmas, the podcast that talks all things Christmas in the 80s. Toys, movies, specials, music, and fads. If it was gnarly during Christmas in the 80s, we got it covered. Now, joining me is a Totally Rad Christmas all-star. You'll know him as the author of the way awesome blog, The Wonderful World of Nothing, and as one-third of the Saturday Morning Mafia, Michael Christelman. Michael, how's it going?
I am doing good. I'm so excited to be on this episode with you, Jerry.
This was a good one. I had completely forgotten how fun the show was.
Yep. Yeah, we were talking about something else months ago, and you said something about Moonlighting, and I was like, they have Christmas episodes. So.
and it stuck. And so then the other day I thought, you know what? I need to get Michael on here to talk about that.
Cool.
Yeah, and I'm glad. Yeah, because it was a really fun episode. And so today we're only going to focus on one of them.
Yep.
Yeah, I can't wait to really get into the other ones.
Yeah. Well, this premiered like December, I think 13th, 14th, or 15th of 1985. I mean, right smack in the 80s. I mean, the dead middle of the 80s.
It's true. Yep. Yeah, and this was I remember my parents loved it. And so because they loved it, it was on. And, if I was awake at the time, then I got to watch it. And, it was just, of course, I didn't get all the humor and some of the situations completely went over my head, and I probably shouldn't have been watching, but, but it was fun.
I was in the 7th grade. David Addison was like an idol to me. I acted like him, which, I apologize to anybody that grew up with me. But my parents, I think, watched one episode and they were like, this is not cool. So I ended up taping it. Plus my bedtime was usually, near when that was on.
Right.
So I had to watch it the next day after school. So by myself.
Yeah. So. Well, this is, it's, and the whole premise and how the whole show came about and everything is just really, really interesting. Apparently the creator was watching like live production of The Taming of the Shrew.
Yes. With
Meryl Streep and Raul Julia, which I bet was amazing because they're both really great actors.
Yeah, that would be something.
And he thought, you know what, this is great. And so, of course, they came up with the whole idea because when his partner, who had done some other shows that were pretty big, he just wanted it to be a detective show. And so he's like, I don't care what you do, just make it a detective show. And so they kind of merged the two ideas together and they came out with this, which is really cool. I mean, it was so groundbreaking, everything about it, Well,
it's funny. Well, for two reasons. I guess I read that Glenn Gordon Caron, had partway through writing it, had thought I'm writing this for Cybill Shepherd. Yes. And then he pitched it to her. The other thing is, I think it was either after this episode or the next Christmas episode, the following year, they actually did Taming of the Shrew.
Yes, they did. And like the whole dialogue was in iambic pentameter and everything.
Yep. So, it kind of encircles, everything he was doing. So,
yeah, I mean, there's so many homages to other things. There's inside jokes. There's so much fourth wall breaking. And I mean, everything about it was just new and fresh. And it was like the first show in, I think, 50 years to be nominated for like both Best Drama Series and Best Comedy Series.
Yep. Yeah, they were one of the first, I think, dramedies, that genre. Yeah, this episode we're going to talk about breaks the fourth wall, I think, more than any other, except for maybe the last episode where they're trying to not be canceled.
Yeah. Which is a crazy premise when you think of it. You know your show is going to be canceled, so you just write that, we're trying not to be canceled.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's
but it fit the whole ethos. Yeah.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. So, because like Agnes was like, why don't you and David, she's talking to Maddie, why don't you and David, man up and, you didn't do your relationship right. And then I hope that Herbert and I get a series on our relationship that'll be done right.
Yeah.
So.
And I always loved Miss DePesto and
yes.
Herbert or
yes.
Booger. And that's how I remember it. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's totally how I always remember. Every time we saw him, I was like, "It's Booger,"
Yeah, I still today I watch it twice. I'm like, "Oh, that's him."
Yep.
So I don't even. I knew that he was Herbert, but it just flew over my head because that's Booger.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
So
Poor guy.
Yeah, I know.
But
yes.
Forever, people are going to call him Booger.
Well, when you've got that look, I don't mean to be offensive, but when you've got that look, it just, Herbert, Booger, it's all the same, no offense to anybody named Herbert.
Yeah. We're putting you on blast. No,
I know.
No, we're really not. But yeah, it was really cool. And, it really juxtaposed that whole, serious, persona of Cybill Shepherd's character Maddie,
yes.
with that real carefree, playful
yes.
attitude that Bruce Willis's David Addison had.
Yep.
And
well, yeah, they Moonlighting had the best episode titles. You don't see episode titles as much anymore. I've got a couple. Their gunfight at the So Corral, the dream sequence always rings twice. Big Man on Mulberry Street, which was actually a title of a Billy Joel song, Atomic Shakespeare that we talked about,
mm-hmm.
And then my favorite was North by North DePesto, and then the second Christmas-themed episode was called "It's a Wonderful Job." So
right,
great. I can remember pretty much anything I watched. I think in the '80s would show the title
mm-hmm.
as but that doesn't happen anymore.
No, it really doesn't.
So
I don't know.
They were great titles.
They did. I think my favorite of all is Atlas Belched.
Yes.
That's a good one.
Yeah, there were great, so especially the second season. The second and third season, I think, were the best. And so a lot of those titles came from those two.
Right. Yeah, that third season especially was. I think that second to the last episode that season actually had like 60 million viewers.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
Wow.
Those are like ridiculous numbers.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Wow.
I know you mentioned it before, the production, there was always reruns and a lot of it because they couldn't keep up. They would literally take like twice as long to shoot scenes or to shoot episodes. The budget was like twice as much as normal dramas or whatever of that, hour-long slots.
Yeah.
Usually the pages are like 60 pages per episode, and theirs were like double that, like 150 pages.
I had that in my notes. Yeah, they were. And I watch it knowing, I knew that, but you watch it and like they're arguing and they say two words and he repeats the two words and she repeats the two words. And that takes up a lot of lines. So yeah, I could totally see that.
Well, and then, it's one of those things because, we're saying that the dialogue was fast and sometimes they would talk over each other and it was hard to hear. And you find later on, there's a lot of shows that kind of copy that. You think like the Gilmore Girls and some of that. Oh gosh, now I can't think of his name. Of course, as we're recording, I can't think of his name. But a lot of those like legal type shows and things like that they go back and forth so quick. And your head is just, spinning from whiplash, trying to follow who's going. Yeah, exactly. But here it seems enjoyable, at least to me.
Yeah, very much so. No, very much so.
Yeah.
There's a point, and I think it was this episode that we're going to talk about, that I feel for Maddie. She's just so upset. They're in the car, and she just screams. Mm-hmm. And it's like, I know if I had that relationship with somebody, that's exactly what I would do. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know like in some of the other episodes, they would even do like little opening segments of them like introducing things or, because there would be such a long hiatus or since new episodes, it's shown that they would get like a TV critic to come on, and he would do some like kind of sum up everything that happened. I mean, and I know a lot of that they said was actually like, it was clever, but a lot of it was actually just to fill in the time, because they were shooting the dialogue and everything was so fast, even though the pages were long, that they just needed to make that time to fill that 1 hour slot.
Well, this episode, I keep saying this episode we're going to do, I promise you, we'll get to it.
Yes.
But in this episode, it's only like 40 minutes. I've watched, some of them were like 47, 48, and then they break the fourth wall for like a song. This episode is done in like 35 minutes.
Yeah, and it's almost a full song too.
Yeah, exactly. So to back up what you were saying, it's just they ran short on time. I mean, they ran short on script. Yeah.
So I guess the premise of Moonlighting is essentially that Maddie Hayes, who was a model, essentially she has no more money because her accountant kind of like embezzled a lot of her liquid funds and things like that, her assets. And so all she has left really is like some businesses that she owned as like a tax write-off kind of thing. Yeah. And one of them is the City of Angels Detective Agency. And so the pilot and the next episode, because it was like a 2-hour long pilot, essentially, 1 and 2 episodes. And David Addison, who's the guy that runs this detective agency and played by Bruce Willis, he kind of pretty much convinces her to like, let's have a partnership. We'll run it together. They decide to name it Blue Moon Investigations because she was the spokeswoman for Blue Moon Shampoo Company.
Yep.
Which actually comes back several times throughout the series. Yes. People will recognize her as Maddie Hayes or hey, you're that Blue Moon Shampoo
girl. Yep.
I mean, that's just, it's a cool premise when you think about it, because
it is.
Like, would a model own like a detective agency? Even as a tax write-off, would she? That doesn't seem right. I mean, I don't know anything about models, obviously, but I mean, that doesn't seem right.
That does not. It does. Yeah.
And so from there we get, shenanigans ensue, and there's a lot of romantic tension between the two leads, and
just a little.
And then eventually there was some real life tension between the two leads.
That also was part of the reason why the delay in episodes was so long, because they didn't work well together towards, part of that. So.
Well, and then I know like she was off, she was like very pregnant, and she gave birth to twins, and she didn't like the long grueling, it was like 15-hour days sometimes. Yep. And of course he was off like filming Die Hard and getting famous, and
that would be hard to come back to a TV, an hour TV show after, saving the world basically, or saving, one tower. But he was looking for a movie career. He wasn't in the beginning. He was just glad to have a job.
He was just glad to have work. Yep.
Yeah. But then that changed. But I will say, now we can finally say that Bruce Willis has a legit reason to be on a Christmas watch list.
There you go. For real. Yep. So for those of you that are still unsure about Die Hard, this for sure is definitely Christmas. Yeah.
Yes. Just putting that out there.
Yep. Point to you, good sir. Oh, and so we're actually covering the episode. Twas the episode before Christmas, talking about good titles.
Exactly.
It's really good. It starts off, of course, with the typical. They kind of had a lot of cold open. Sometimes they would get into Bruce Willis and Maddie and stuff, but this was just right away. It's a cold open, which I really love, and it's some gangsters essentially. They find, or I guess it opens with the wife, a husband and wife in bed, and she hears something downstairs, and then he hears it. And so she makes him go get up and check it out.
Yep.
And it's some gangsters. And
one of them we know.
Yes, it's
Richard Belzer?
Belzer, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah, who looks exactly the same.
I know, doesn't it?
It's like, wow, that's good.
Yeah.
But yeah, he looks exactly the same. He's like, hey, you shouldn't have ratted us out or whatever. And so they're getting revenge. We find out the husband's in witness protection. And I mean, they even say something like, did you think we wouldn't find you? And
yeah.
And
it was like, this is as good as the witness protection program can do. This
pretty
apartment.
Much, yeah.
So.
Which and so the wife, they have a baby, and she hears everything, and so she grabs the baby and like quietly escapes. which I thought was really great.
Yes.
So they pour alcohol down the guy's throat and then throw him off the balcony to make it seem like he got drunk and fell off.
And yes, exactly.
And but then they notice that he's married. There's wedding photos. Yep. There's a baby, and they see
there's a crib that's empty.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so then they're like, "Where's your wife?" And so they go hunting for her.
Yep.
And I noticed she goes up the stairs instead of down the stairs. I thought that was a choice.
Where is she going? I
have no idea. Yeah. It's almost like, I know later on she says something that she left her with that DePesto girl.
Yeah.
Who seemed nice, but it's like, how did she know where she lived?
Yeah. Yep.
and why not just run to the police? Yeah. That's what I don't get. But
and when she's running on Miss DePesto's floor, she sees a door open. She doesn't know that it's hers. She just, I'm assuming she just sees that door open and goes in there.
Yeah, that's what I thought. And then later on, she said that line. I said, "Wait a minute, that doesn't happen." Yeah. But
revisionist history, I guess.
Yeah. It is what it is. But
yeah, exactly.
But So Miss DePesto was doing some laundry, and so she left her door, and I guess it was unlocked, kind of open, and.
Yeah, actually, on my second viewing, she kind of backs into the door and then it kind of opens. So I thought, oh, maybe that's, I didn't notice that. But anyway.
No, I didn't notice that either. So, yeah, it's slightly ajar. And the lady who, at this point, the criminal has found her.
Yes.
So, he's been chasing her. And so she runs into the apartment and...
closes the door.
It cuts. Yeah, it closes the door and it cuts, and we don't see anything. And then Agnes DePesto is the secretary or one of the assistants there at Moon. Anyway, so she's coming back from doing her laundry, and by the way, her dress is completely 80s. Her nightgown, yeah.
I when she's got the Santa hat, the elf slippers.
Yeah.
I was I wrote in my notes, because I took notes on this episode, isn't that exactly what you'd expect Miss DePesto to wear?
Yes.
For Christmas.
Yes. So. And it's got that ruffle. It's like a V.
Yes.
Coming down from the shoulders. It's completely 80s. It's it's great. And so she goes in. She notices the door's closed. And so she luckily has her keys around her neck and opens it up, and then she finds the baby in the laundry basket.
Yep.
And
nobody else.
So I guess the mom has left. We don't, at this point, we don't know if, the crook caught her or what.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And maybe she hid the baby or something. I don't know. But yeah, so we don't know what happened to the mom. All we know is that Mr. Pesto has found the baby.
Yeah. When she's going to the laundry room and back, they're playing songs from the Phil Spector Christmas album.
Are they really? I didn't notice that.
And I can hear that Christmas album any time of year, and it's automatically Christmas.
Nice.
I know, 'Tis the Podcast. Is this a Christmas episode, or did this episode take place during Christmas? Mm-hmm. I've always felt this was a Christmas episode, but as soon as those songs begin playing, it's that's definitely a Christmas episode.
Yeah. It was, you know what? That's a good question. I would say this is a Christmas episode for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
would.
Especially, and we'll get to it.
Yes.
At the end.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so she, goes into work the next day, and Maddie and David are there at work, and of course he's running a scheme or a charity. I don't know what you want to call it. I'd
call it a scheme. Yeah.
Where everybody there in the office is answering ho, 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 Santa's village or something like that.
Yeah, North Pole.
North Pole, yeah. And it's so instead of writing letters to Santa, they can actually call in for $1.99 a minute.
Yeah. That's expensive.
That's expensive in 1980.
Yeah, very.
And so of course she's furious because he does all this stuff behind her back all the time, and so
exactly
what's going on? And then as they're arguing furiously, they hear the baby.
Yeah,
and they kind of look around and they realize it's coming from Agnes's desk.
Yep. Well, I love. It's so moonlighting because he says, "Where's that sound coming from?" She says, "Where's that sound coming from?" I think the entire office says, "Where's that sound coming from?"
Yeah.
It's perfect.
Yeah, and she just kind of has like that meek look, like, sorry, you know. And so she tells him, I found this. She tells him the whole story. Found the baby, and she's there holding the baby and cuddling it, and he's a cute little boy.
Yeah, he is. Yes, he is.
And so of course Maddie's like, we got to call the police, and David, who's always a little more compassionate, is like, well, what's the harm in letting her hold the baby at least for a while? We don't really know much about the baby
or where the mother is.
The mother is, she could be dead. She could have abandoned him. Maybe it's a better place, no need to go to the police right away.
Yeah.
And which I don't know if that's the smartest thing.
Especially for a detective agency.
Yeah.
Never worked in detective agency, but I think that would be up there for calling the police.
Yeah, I would think so too. So yeah, he's like, it's okay. And in the end, they go to investigate, and they pretend that they are the DePestos, and they go to her apartment building and all that. And while they're there, they discover, or they're called in by some federal agents.
Yeah, it was the Justice Department.
The Justice Department, that's the one. Yeah. And one of their guys has been killed that was in witness protection, so they'd like to find out more about it. They don't know where the wife and the baby is. They don't know who did it. It seems fishy, but it's you could have just whatever. And so of course right away Bruce Willis is a little suspicious, like, well, maybe the mom, the wife and the baby killed him and ran away with the baby.
Yeah.
So he's like, well, all the more reason for Mr. Pesto to kill the baby.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's a cool little bit here because every single one of the of the agents, or their last name is King.
Which when I was thinking, okay, this could lead to something, and obviously it did, and we'll explain why as we go on in this episode. But it was so perfect.
It really was. And I remember thinking, did they all say King? When I heard it.
Especially if you call to mind the Bob Newhart or the Newhart episode, you guys, you and
the
Todd,
Wiseman,
yeah. So it's kind of the same.
Exactly, yeah. It's kind of the same premise there at the end. Yeah. Oh man, it's so. The writers on these shows are just so genius. I mean, it was.
Yeah, I know.
And at the time, you're like, well, that's weird, but you don't really think about it again until later.
Yep.
But so of course they discover that. They're all named King. They tell them about that, and so they go back to Miss DePesto, and in the car we get some more classic arguing.
Yes.
And David accuses Maddie of being too cold, and he's like, "You just, you begrudge her a child or something like that." And
you don't want her to see the pleasure, the pleasure of her hanging out with that child right before Christmas, or something like that. Yeah.
I don't begrudge her pleasure. And but I mean, it's just, that's classic. In the car, the banter, the arguing. It's just so classic Moonlighting, and they really pull it off well. And
they do.
You can tell that they're still both very invested in the series, the franchise.
Yep.
And so there's a sweet little bit where they don't know, now they know she can't really go back to her apartment, even though I think at this point, is this when they go to their apartment first? Or no, first they're at
they go back to Blue Moon.
Yeah, they go back to Blue Moon. They discuss what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And they end up convinced that why doesn't she watch the baby for a while we investigate? Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so she ends up going to Maddie's apartment.
Yeah.
And she has like a huge, like 12-foot tree. I mean, it's huge.
I was going to ask you, because of where you work, what do you think that tree cost?
Man.
Maybe on today's money.
Because in 1985 dollars, I have no idea. But I mean, I'd say, like, if let's say it's a Newman tree, and it's a 12-footer. I mean, it's got to be about $1,400 or $1,500.
Wow,
easy.
Wow. Well, that's some supermodel money.
That's true. Yeah.
So,
yeah, for real.
I wondered. I wondered. So now I know.
I was watching it though, and I was like, "Oh, those lights are terrible."
Yes, they are. And
but I'm
the
so
star
used to LED
at
now.
yeah,
Oh yeah,
at the star. It was like, oh my gosh.
Yeah. Yes. She spent too much on the tree. She didn't have enough for the lights.
Exactly.
But there's just this little thing, and she's there just sitting next to the tree, Mr. Pesto holding the baby, kind of cradling and kind of rocking him a little bit back and forth. And the lights are off except for the tree. And I mean, it's just like a gorgeous moment.
Yeah.
And it reminded me actually of my son and my daughter when they were little.
Oh, nice.
And standing by the tree and just trying to rock them to sleep.
Yeah. I would do the same thing with all three of mine.
Yeah.
So, yep.
So I really, that moment got to me. Like,
yeah.
And I know it was much more than when I was a kid, for sure.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
But so there was that, and they kind of have a good night and they keep investigating. But there's a bit where they end up going back to Mr. Pesto's apartment.
Yes.
And while they're there, that criminal, with the dark sunglasses, like his bit, that's like always been his thing. He never takes those sunglasses off.
No.
All throughout his career. I don't think I've ever seen him without him.
I don't think so either. Yeah.
But he, so he's there and he's like, "Hey, I happen to notice you have a baby. Like, it doesn't really look like, I didn't know there's no crib here,
Yeah. There's no toys. There's no
toys.
Nothing. And so of course, Cybill Shepherd is like, "Well, we don't live here, and I don't live here. Neither does the baby."
Yep.
And he's like, "Well, I don't know. It doesn't really look like you." And anyway, so he essentially threatens her.
Yeah. He says he's going to keep an eye on him.
"I'm going to keep an eye on you. Yeah.
Yep.
I know what's going on," kind of a thing.
Yeah.
And so they get out of there quick.
Yes. He, I guess, was on Law and Order, was it? I always pictured him, maybe it was flashing back to this role. I always pictured him as a heavy, not the Law and Order guy.
Right. Yeah.
That's just me. Maybe it's, what he wears, how he talks, but
probably a little bit of both, honestly.
Yeah.
So they go back to the agency the next day, everybody, and guess who's in their office?
Yep.
But Bruce Willis, he had found the mom, the wife. And so she tells her side of the story that, she went to the apartment, the baby was crying. She left him there and then that way, if the guy was still following her, he would follow her and not the baby. The baby would be safe. And she knew that Mr. Pesto was a nice lady. She seemed nice. And so she kind of trusted her.
Well, and she knew that she worked for Blue Moon.
And she knew
which was Blue Moon, okay. So
yeah,
I don't know how she knew that, but
convenient writing.
Exactly.
That's how.
Yep.
But it's so good. So there's like a little funny part, where she's explaining the whole thing, and of course the baby's name is Andrew. But this is where we get the great line where David's like convinced that they're in an allegory.
Yes.
And let's see. Hold on. I wrote it down here. So so this is where the mom, whose name is Mary.
Yep.
Mary, of course, she says, "Forgive the way I look. I haven't been able to change or bathe or anything for several days. I've been on the run with no place to stay. I've been trying to find a hotel room, but it's Christmas, and there's no room in any of the inns."
Yeah. I thought at least they do like hotel or, vacancy, but they actually went straight for it and said,
yeah, it's really on the nose here.
Yeah.
Which is so them, but they just add a little twist.
Well, it is.
He goes, "You hear that? No room at the inns." And Maddie says, "So?" He says, "So, a woman named Mary, a baby, 3 kings. Confidentially, I'm worried." "About what?" "Maddie, I think we're trapped in an allegory." "What?" "I'm telling you, we got everything in that story except for a camel." And then she offers him a cigarette, and it's a pack of Camels. "Anyone care for a smoke?" He's like, "That's it."
Well, and the side joke was, did you notice the robe she was wearing? That could totally have been it had a hood.
It did have a hood.
It looked like something that like Mary and Joseph would wear. That's kind of. That's what I thought.
No. Yes, for real. I think this is honestly one of the best Christmas episodes.
I agree.
Honestly,
yep.
It's so clever. Anyway, so of course, he's like, "Okay, now what are we going to do?" And they're like, "Well, let's go tell her we found her baby." And so they go outside to get the baby. and Mr. Pesto and the baby are gone.
Yep.
And so they're like, uh-oh, okay, well, we found the mom, but we lost the baby. So, of course, she's, Maddie's like, we have to call the police now. Can we please call the police? And he's like, no, what are we going to say? We're detectives. We found a baby. We found the mom. We lost the baby. I mean,
and we're a detective agency.
And we're detectives. This is going to make us look terrible.
And then I think the next thing is they're in the car, and Maddie and who says, why don't we follow the wise men and look underneath the star? And then Maddie gets the idea of, hey, I know where they are.
I know where they are. Yep, you're right. And so she remembers, and so she goes back to her place.
Yep. And it's dark.
Yeah. Well, actually, before that, they go to Mr. Pesto's apartment.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah. And there's kind of a note, I think, right? Or is it something that they find? No, it is a note. Yeah.
Note, yeah.
Yeah. So they kind of figure it out. I think they have to because of their scheme or their plan at the end. So they figure out that she's been taken by the bad guy, the mobster. And so that's when, they're in the car. They're trying to figure out where. And then
that's right.
That's when, he says, I wish this was back in the olden times. It would be so much easier. And she's like, easier? He's like, yeah, you just follow the star. And that's when, you're right. Then Cybill Shepherd is like, well, I know where they are. Stop. So we go back to her place, and we get just a crazy gag. I mean, it's like straight out of a Three Stooges cartoon.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yep.
Yeah, we get this funny bit. And so she's like, oh, there's nothing sweeter than, holding a baby by a Christmas tree and, on Christmas Eve. Because at this point, it's Christmas Eve now.
Yeah, yep.
But that's when the mobster comes out and his buddy, his flunky or whatever. And he's like, all right, we want you to tell us where the mom is. Because I guess she saw everything, and so she can identify them and put them away again.
Exactly.
And so they're like, it's Christmas Eve. It's almost time for Santa. And that's when we get Bruce Willis dressed as Santa coming down the chimney.
Yep.
In an apartment? Do apartments?
Yeah, exactly. That's very true. No, it's Maddie's house.
Oh, it's a house. You're right. It is a house. Yeah. Because she's got that model money. And
Exactly.
So he climbs down her chimney, and he's like head down, like face first, And he's like, ho, 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 and all this stuff. And the mob guys are like, what is going on here? And he's got the big sack. And so they start threatening. And we get just a crazy screwball comedy bit where he hits him with the stack and knocks him over. And then he runs and hides behind the couch, where the baby and Agnes and Maddie are all hiding.
Yep.
and they start just taking stuff like toys out of the bag and throwing them at
balls and everything. Yep.
At the criminals. And they're just trying to get up and shoot them. And they shoot the couch a bit, but Nerf balls and little footballs and all these things are.
There's a dart gun.
Which hits him right in the forehead.
You notice how long that stayed on his forehead?
It stayed on quite a bit.
Yeah. I've never had a dart gun do that for me.
Me neither. No, it's usually boom, fall.
Yeah, exactly. Like a glancing blow.
Yeah, it's funny because all these crummy toys, it wouldn't stop anybody.
No.
And then of course they're advancing, and he has a little wind-up car, and he lets that go, and they slip on the wind-up car and fall down, and it's so ridiculous, and the complete polar opposite of all the seriousness that has kind of been happening.
Yeah, yes, exactly.
But it works because of the whole way.
Yeah, you can believe it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Especially, the guy just said, I think we're in an allegory. So why wouldn't you buy toys, fake rubber toys, stopping a mobster?
Exactly.
Yeah. So they're finally out of toys. They've been throwing and they're out of toys. And it looks like the mobsters are about to actually kill them.
Yes.
When suddenly 3 more Santas appear, all with guns.
Yep.
And it turns out it is the 3 kings. The 3 agents named King, each named King. Yep. No relation.
Yeah, no, not at all.
And one of them Uncle Phil.
I think so. And actually, I think another one was, it sure looked like the guy that did the Mighty Cars that would talk real fast. Might not have been called Mighty Cars.
The Micro Machines?
Yes, Micro Machines.
Yeah.
He looked awfully similar, but I might have been wrong. But
it was, yeah, it's like the three kings came in to save the day.
Yes.
And so they arrest him. Everything ends happily ever after. The mom gets her baby back, and
Bruce Willis, bounds his belly, knocks the guy down.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I forgot about that.
Perfect.
Bit. That was a good bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man. And so then they're having a Christmas party.
Yes.
At the office.
Yes.
Right. And they're like,
with snow.
Yeah. They're like, all we need is snow. And it starts to snow. Yep. And then we get this cool thing where it kind of reflects, the snow is coming down on everybody, and they start walking out, and they literally, because they hear singing, and they walk out the soundstage, like off the actual set.
Yeah.
And you see the camera crew, you see the boom mics, everything. And it's like the friends and family of the crew are there.
Yep. Yeah, everybody.
And and then all the actors and everybody, and they're singing the first Noel.
Yes.
Yeah. And I mean, they go through like almost all the doors.
They went through a lot of it.
And
yeah.
And so Bruce Willis and Cybill Shepherd have like a nice little kiss. And I mean, it was great.
Yeah.
And they're all like, Merry Christmas. And they're singing through it. And oh man, this got me, because if you notice, or at least to me, it looked like they tried to get every single person there, at least.
Yeah, there were a lot. I mean, there were at least 100 people, maybe. There were at least 100 people.
Yeah, and it wasn't just a wide shot. Like, they'd have close-ups, and they always got the children, and it looked like they really did try to capture all of the participants.
I tried to find out online if that was planned, or if, they just ran out of time. They just ran out of dialogue.
Yeah.
And they had, almost 10 minutes to devote to, fourth wall shenanigans. That's probably not the way I should say it. But.
Fourth wall shenanigans. I like that. But yeah, it literally is just like 4 to 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, of just the whole group singing all the verses of the first Noel. And you get to see, the children they're all dressed up in like their 80s finery.
Yeah, exactly.
With the collars.
Lots of sweaters.
Lots of sweaters, lots of sweater vests, which I didn't remember. It was cute. It really was.
Yeah.
I think there was even a dog there.
Oh, I don't remember that, but there probably was.
Yep. It's just, apparently, if you listen to if you watch it on DVD, then there's a commentary track. The director, who was Peter Werner, and the producer, Jay Daniel, who was quite often the go-between between Cybill Shepherd and Bruce Willis when they were fighting. They actually like point out their own family as they're going, and so I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just it was really, really great, and it was like the perfect Christmas moment and the perfect moonlighting moment, because their show was just so odd and offbeat, and
moonlighting, you never knew what. You tune in, and one week it could be a Shakespeare episode. The next week it could be black and white, and it was actually filmed in black and white. They didn't decolorize it, so that took a lot of money.
It did, yeah. I heard that.
But you never knew what was going to happen between 9 and 10 at ABC at 9 o'clock on Tuesday. You never knew what was going to happen, and that was kind of neat.
Yeah, I wish that he had stayed on, because I don't think it would have ended in 5 seasons, and that the last 2 wouldn't have been as good. I think it probably would have gone closer to 8 seasons, and I think it probably would have peaked at like season 5 or season 6. You know what I mean?
No, I totally agree. And actually, Glenn Gordon Caron actually wrote this episode.
Oh, nice.
So we really get to see, what he envisioned for those characters.
Yeah.
So
he had a lot of creative control, because it was like one of the few productions that were actually done in-house. So they didn't have to pay for a lot of royalties and things like that.
Yeah.
They pretty much just did it all themselves.
Yeah, I
And
read that. I think Punky Brewster was another one. I don't remember what the third one was.
I
that
never
was
heard
set
of it,
up like
honestly.
that.
Yeah, it was some show I never heard of.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so he had like a ton of creative control, and so you can tell that he got away with a lot of stuff, and some of it was because he had a vision for his show, and he wanted to see it through. So like that black and white episode you were talking about, I mean, there was a lot of those like fantasy type sequences, you know, where I think even Orson Welles narrated that.
Yep. Yes. And actually, I think that aired like just days before he died.
Oh, wow. That's
probably the last thing he did.
Oh man, that's crazy.
Yeah.
To think about, because I mean, it's such a great episode, but I mean, wow, you know, I mean, that just blows your mind.
Yep.
But they had a ton of like guest stars, like Virginia Madsen came out later on. I mean, she still wasn't super big, but like Tim Robbins, C. Thomas Howell, of course, Orson Welles we talked about, Dana Delaney.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, Judd Nelson was there, Billy Barty, Whoopi Goldberg, Don King.
Whoopi Goldberg. Yep.
The Temptations, Brad Dourif, Cole Meany from Star Trek.
Wow.
O'Brien, Mr. O'Brien. You know?
Mr. O'Brien. Well, I know the Temptations, that brings me, I guess in like the second, maybe the third season, he recorded Bruce Willis recorded an album. Which I got.
Bruno, right? Yeah, something like that.
And the Temptations were on at least one track.
Yeah. It was. I mean, it's been a while since I've heard that album, but
he did another album a couple years later, and I had both cassettes. I was so proud of that. So,
nice.
I had a girl I knew had a Moonlighting book that she let me borrow. Again, I was really into Moonlighting.
Yeah.
So
David Addison was a cool guy, man.
Yes, he was. Yeah.
You know, he was kind of not really a joker, but he was very just easygoing and carefree.
Yeah.
And, you know, and he wasn't afraid of really anything, you know?
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah, he was cool. Like I think if you were to mix him with Michael Knight, I think you'd have like a great character for a show, you know?
Yes, you would. I got to write that down. I'll give you credit, but I got to write that down.
Note to self, write a show with Pierce Brosnan, but he was on the show, but he was actually playing Remington Steele.
Yes, yeah.
Because it was kind of a little
over networks.
Which is another thing that most networks don't do nowadays.
No, they don't.
They were able to get away with it. You know, Robert Wool, Dr. Joyce Brothers, Ray Charles, John Goodwin. I mean, there was just a ton of you know.
Well, I think as it went on, it became like not the place to be, but you know, it was a great series, and everybody wanted to be a part of it. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Well, they even do some musical numbers in some of those fantasy episodes.
Yeah. The Big Man on Mulberry Street. That's a Billy Joel song. They did a whole musical number, like with dancers. I mean, real professional dancers, and a set. It was very cool.
Yeah, I think Cybill Shepherd sings a couple of times too.
Yeah, yep. In the black and white episode.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
I got to go back and watch that one because I remember at the time thinking, oh, black and white.
I know, but now
you know,
it's like, wait.
When you're younger, it's like, oh, black and white means it's an old movie. You know?
Yeah, yep.
But yeah, nowadays it's like, oh, cool, it's an old movie, you know. But
well, I know I don't recall the actor's name, but the assistant on Heart to Heart.
Oh, yeah, I know who you're talking about.
He played actually that part. I think it's in the second Christmas episode, and
what's his name?
Plays,
Lionel Stander. He played Max.
Yeah. Max, he is in. Well, long story short, the Blue Moon Detective Agency is not bought out, but the space is leased by the Heart Detectives or whatever they called it, and so he sees her. I mean, he sees her, and they have a dialogue. Do I know you? No. Do I know you? So kind of cool.
Yeah, there was a lot of really cool things that they did that they were able to get away with just because. And unfortunately, things started to fall apart. We kind of talked about that already, but it was pretty much he knew Karen pretty much knew that it was going to be either him or Cybill Shepherd.
Yeah,
and he knew they weren't going to fire her, so
I blame Mark Harmon because if you're a Moonlighting fan, you know why.
Yeah.
But anyway, that's an arc of the story that led to the downfall, I think.
Well, then I think was it David Dugan that plays
later.
the guy that she meets and then like marries like a few hours later on a on a whim, and of course she's like, my character would never do this. And she fought and was vetoed essentially. And it was just kind of season 4 and season 5 are just kind of downhill after that.
Yep.
And then we get that iconic last episode where they're basically just trying to save the show.
Yeah. There's a scene when I guess Mr. Pesto liked another guy, or another guy fought for her affection, and Herbert finds him dead on the floor, and he's saying, basically, if we hadn't been canceled, he wouldn't have died.
Yeah. That's funny.
You think about it and we think, wait, no. But it is very funny. It's very, very funny. So
and then they end up going to like finding the producer, or a network head, and he's like, hey, relationships are fragile, and romances are, they're, you got to watch out for them. You got to do them right. And basically was like, hey, you guys didn't write correctly, and so you're canceled.
Yep. And then they go to a priest.
Yes,
and they're trying to convince him to marry them. And, he's like, he can see through this. Like, I'm never marrying these two. Yeah. So it was a great, it was a great farewell to a really awesome, a rad series.
It was a rad series.
So
and I think the very closing words, there's like a message on the screen. It's like Blue Moon investigation ceased operations May 14th, 1989.
Yep.
The Anselmo case was never solved and remains a mystery to this day.
Yep.
As if it was like unsolved mysteries or something,
Well, actually, that mystery was solved because the guy got back with his wife. Because it was... And so it was solved. Unless I'm missing something. I
don't know. But anyway, I have to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
But
I do. I watched it today actually, and
nice.
it was well worth the price, which of course was free. But that's not what I'm saying.
It's always no, not always. I can think of something I'd rather not have watched that was free.
Exactly.
But it's definitely worth its price. What's interesting is that because there was so many delays and because there were so few episodes, like they never made the full 22 episodes per season. It was always like 14 to 16.
Yeah.
They actually didn't have enough episodes for syndication.
Yep.
So it really wasn't seen again until it came out on DVD later on.
Yeah. I can remember when I was a senior in high school, I would get home and like from 3 to 4 on like Lifetime, actually, I think it was. I was flipping channels one day and Moonlighting was on. So I got to see some of them in, rerun. But that was a very rare thing because they only had, 66 episodes. But then when they split the 2-hour premiere, they got 67 episodes. But that's less than what they need.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's 88, I think is what.
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. I really liked that in 1985 on ABC, Tuesday nights, you could watch Who's the Boss, Growing Pains, and then Moonlighting. Like these just great shows.
Yep.
It's like talk about a great lineup.
Well, I think after that it was 30-something.
Oh yeah, which I never
was on after that. I never. I got through my 30s and never even thought of it.
Mm-hmm.
So I probably won't watch it. But yeah, that was the full lineup, and I'm like, that's a great lineup.
It really is for a Tuesday night. Man, they were killing it.
Yep.
I mean, literally, Moonlighting was nominated for like 40 Emmys. It won 7, and it also was nominated for 10 Golden Globes and won 3. But it was ahead of its time. There's a lot of things. I mean, Deadpool now breaks the fourth wall, and
yes,
Moonlighting
exactly.
did it first. Hey, take that.
Yep, exactly.
I mean, every time there was an episode that was different, and I look back on it now and I think, wow, Moonlighting pretty much did it first. So like I was watching Community the other day, and they did a claymation, and
yes,
had a claymation episode.
Yep.
And Community does tons of homage episodes, and so did Moonlighting. I mean, there's a lot of that.
Yeah.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really was ahead of its time. And I think that's why it was so popular, until of course it wasn't, but
yeah, no, I wish one of the streaming services would pick it up. I don't know why.
Me too. Yeah.
I mean, they've picked up things that only ran one season.
Yeah.
So that would be nice. I didn't read the whole article, but I guess it was dated like 7 years ago that Cybill Shepherd wanted to make a Moonlighting movie, which obviously, didn't go anywhere because it's, like I say, that article was 7 years old.
Yeah, that would have been cool.
But,
I mean,
yes, it would have.
Still be cool if even now, they're in their 60s.
Yeah,
I still think it would be cool. I'd watch it.
Yeah, I would too.
Because he's done mostly the serious things since then. Like a million Die Hards and
I could just see the open episode. David, where's your hair? Maddie, where's your whatever?
Yeah.
So,
why do you always answer my questions with questions?
With the question, yep.
Do I? That's a great line.
That was great. But it's true.
Yeah. It's really, really good. Apparently, a show called Riptide, which was also a detective series, I guess it had declined to the point of cancellation because it was airing against Moonlighting. They actually aired an episode in '86. Basically, that show's detectives acted as mentors to someone called Rosalind Grant and Carrie Russell. And they were bickering stars of a television detective show pilot. And even though their names were changed, they were clearly parodies of Cybill Shepherd and Bruce Willis.
Yep.
Bruce Willis,
Yep.
So,
I read
that's
that.
kind of funny.
That was cool.
And so
I kind of
want
to go see it.
I know, I do too. I want to go look up Riptide.
Yeah.
But apparently it's like referred to now, that episode is like the Moonlighting episode of Riptide.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is so cool. And the episode's called If You Can't Beat 'Em, Join 'Em.
Join 'Em, yep.
which is also a very Moonlighting style title.
Yes, it is.
Oh man. This is a great show. And every time I think about it, it always puts a smile on my face. And even though I don't have very clear memories of the episodes themselves, there's several scenes from episodes that stick out. So I always remembered the Santas, the 3 Santas, even though I didn't really remember what else happened. So seeing that again was really cool.
Yeah.
Of course, the closing episode is stuck in my mind as well. But I mean, just all these little bits and that they did and running gags were just. It was great, especially when mixed with the more serious detective work that they did. And so, it was a great TV.
And the soundtrack. I mean, I know that Moonlighting had a soundtrack that was released, but the songs they would play every week, old Motown, old 60s and 50s stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, really, and they paid for, no offense to Knight Rider, they paid for the actual artist.
Well, they had the money to do it because they were going to get a lot more on the back end.
True. Yeah. Very true. Very true.
Yep. So, the theme song was written by Lee Holdridge and Al Jarreau, and it's sung by Al Jarreau.
Yes, it was.
Lee Holdridge, I know, because he did the music to Beauty and the Beast, that show, you remember from the 80s with Linda Hamilton and I think Ron Perlman? So there was that one, and then he also wrote, and this is where I first knew him, he did the music to Beastmaster.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Which is one of my favorite, fantasy sword and sorcery kind of.
Yep. That's awesome. I mean, obviously, I knew who Al Jarreau is, but I didn't know. Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, and Alf Clausen also scored a lot of the episodes, and I knew him, even though he had done some things. I knew him mostly from The Simpsons. He does a lot of The Simpsons music.
Okay. Yep.
And so it's pretty cool to see like where they go, where they went on from there.
Exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, cool. I mean, this was a great episode. There was a whole bunch of little gags here and there, and the dialogue, like when David's like, I just had a thought, and Maddie's like, there's a first,
Yeah.
It's like they bickered and they hated each other, but they loved each other. I mean, it was great. Yeah.
Yep. No, it really, like I said, I watched it a couple days ago, and I watched it again today just to refresh. But I ended up watching more episodes.
Yeah.
And I really got caught in, I really, really used to love that show.
Yeah. I'm going to put it, because I mean, they're out there. So, you don't have to use unsavory methods to find them.
Yes.
But I'm definitely going to be watching a few more just because I remember like, oh man, it's great. And they back and forth. And,
it's the dialogue is, I mean, you've got to keep up. Most of it is like repeating something, but you've got to keep up because they go breakneck speed.
Yes, they do. Yeah. So like when they're talking about the baby that, Agnes found, it's like, she has no business keeping that baby and you know it. I don't know it. I don't know anything. Will you put that in writing?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. It was 35 or 36 minutes of pure perfection.
It sure was. Yeah. It was great.
So, yep.
So I have to ask, what would you say, if you would be your happiest memory with this show?
I remember the Shakespeare episode. I acted in high school, but I did not like Shakespeare.
Yeah.
But when they did Shakespeare, and he did a song like midway through that episode, when he did that song, it was rocking. That was the best moment. My friend and I would watch that forever.
Nice.
We have it on video, and we just watched those 2.5 minutes forever. So that was by far my happiest moment.
Right on. Yeah, for me, I mean, I don't have a moment specifically. I just remember, I would watch, the shows before, and then by this time I'd already, taken a bath, getting ready for bed.
Yeah.
But I was in my pajamas, but my parents were watching it, and I'd just kind of sit down on the couch, and
cool.
My brothers were still young. I think my youngest brother was just born.
Oh, okay.
And so yeah, it was just kind of just the family sitting around, and the middle brother David was just kind of playing with whatever, getting ready for bed, And so I would just watch, and it was funny. And yeah, again, I didn't really know what was going on, but it was great.
Well, I could see as a young child, it would be, because everything's fast. They may be arguing, but it's fast, and I could see that attracting like a younger kid.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because you don't see that. You didn't see that every day on TV.
No, you really didn't at all. And yeah, so it was great. Trying to see if I could find that song, but no, I don't. I don't see it.
Actually, if I'll know it the second I get off.
That's all. Yeah, that always happens.
I still have it. I mean, I still have it somewhere. I have an MP3 of it. Good love.
Oh, Good Lovin'. That's right.
Yeah, that's what it was.
Yes, that's
what
it
was. Yes.
Yep, Good Lovin'.
I still remember some of the movements that he made. It was just, we would watch that thing. I'm surprised that tape didn't wear out, because we'd watch that like 2.5 minutes over and over again.
Good Lovin'. Yep. But in that Bruce Willis way. Yeah.
Exactly.
Oh man, but now we come to my favorite part of the show, which is a little segment I like to call Gag Me with a Spoon. So this is where we do our best impression of our least favorite part, which was also kind of hard to pick this episode. but I was able to pick. And then we put it up to the voters. And as an all-star, you already have a sticker. So I think right now we're just kind of going for bragging rights.
Okay.
I'll let you go first as a guest and just kind of set up the scene.
Okay. Well, it's... Maddie has just come into the office, and she hears the party, and then David, he picks up the phone and goes, "North Pole? Santa speaking. Ho, ho, ho. Sure, I'm sure this is Santa Claus." And bow.
And so for me, it was also a David line, but mostly because it's a little mean. I mean, even though he doesn't really mean it mean, but it's almost like a backhanded compliment.
Yes.
Which, he had a lot of.
Yes,
but
he did.
This was at the point where he and Cybill Shepherd are arguing about whether or not she should call the police and turn the baby in. And he said, "Did you see the look in Agnes's eyes? They were both pointing in the same direction for once."
Yeah. You know what? You win. I don't care what the voting is. You win. That was great. I was going to do a Richard Belzer line where, you call this, secured. Anyway, I was going to do a Richard Belzer line.
Gotcha.
But I didn't.
Yeah. Well, there was a few that I wasn't sure, because I think the corniest part of it, even though it's like the best part of it in my mind, but I think the corniest part is when they're just throwing the toys at the crooks, but you can't really, there's no lines, so you can't really say anything.
Yeah, true. Well, it's neat because that scene starts with Christmas music, and it ends up being like the whistles and stuff that cartoons have.
Yeah,
so it really
exactly.
Devolved into chaos.
Yeah, it really is. It's a great scene, and so I was like, I don't think I can really do that scene. So I had to scour and find a line that I was like, well, I guess this line, just because the whole dialogue was snappy and I loved it, But but it was also, the episode as a whole was really sweet.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it's just yes, they were in an allegory, but. But when she's just there holding the baby under the tree, and it's just like, oh man.
Yep.
Gets you right in the feels, as they say.
Yep, exactly.
Yep.
Yep.
So, G.I. Joe, they taught us that knowing is half the battle. What would you say is the other half?
I would say the other half is not to fall in love with your boss.
Oh, yeah, for real.
Because that's kind of what happened.
Because that's what happened. And then he, the show
and
got
they cancel it.
That's good. That's better than mine. Mine was... So if knowing is half the battle, the other half is always including a meta caroling scene for your Christmas episode.
There you go.
That'll just make sure that it's definitely a Christmas episode.
Yes, exactly.
Definitely not ambiguous. Oh, man.
Yeah, exactly.
But, Michael, it's been so much fun talking with you. It's been a blast. What do you want to plug? Really the most active thing I'm on is the Tis the Podcast Facebook site. I have a blog. I need to start writing more. That's kind of what I'm plugging right now. I'm kind of in semi-retirement. Nice. Although I hear there are a couple of guys that want to get me out of retirement. I've heard that you have something coming up soon, in something brewing. Yeah, I'm excited for that. Saturday Morning Mafia.
What?
Speaking of mobsters and mafia.
Exactly. I got to wear those glasses though. I got to find some.
Oh man, yeah, you should. That would be awesome.
Yes.
Oh man. But on that note, I'm going to end it by saying, and first of all, thanks again.
Oh, of course.
I'm going to end it by saying, so a woman named Mary, a baby, 3 kings? Confidentially, I'm worried. About what? Maddie, I think we're trapped in an allegory. A what? I'm telling you, we got everything in that story except for checking us out on our social media pages, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you're feeling like Miss DePesto cradling a baby under the tree on Christmas Eve, leave us a review on iTunes. Not only does it help us reach more people, but you also get a free sticker. Now, don't forget to vote. Later, dudes.